Hello and welcome to the Kamla Show, where we bring you interviews and conversations with technologists, entrepreneurs, filmmakers, and other newsmakers from in and around the San Francisco Bay Area. My guest today is Academy Award winner Stephen Gaghan. He won the award for writing Traffic. This is part 3 of our interview. In part 2, he spoke about why he writes and how he came to be involved with writing the screenplays for Traffic and Syriana. In part 3, he takes us behind the scenes in the making of Syriana.
Into it. And then what I really was paying attention to was America's foreign policy changing radically. Like the ship that's America had taken a hard turn. Someone up in the bow spun the wheel and the boat was just like going a different direction. You know, in terms of nation building policies, that we could go, you know, export our democracy, and that would be a really great idea and work, and that we could also.
But that's not a new idea. It was there during the Cold War period, to some extent.
A little bit, but I think that, you know, the fundamental, you know, my childhood was spent in a sort of isolationist live and let live philosophy, you know.
In Kentucky.
Yeah, in Kentucky and in America, you know, burned in Vietnam. You know, content to let the wall stand in Berlin, content to sort of encourage peace in the Middle East but not get too involved, you know, and that's really where I grew up, you know, from 1974 till, you know, until 9/11. That's what, you know, we invaded Grenada. I'm sorry, that doesn't count. But so
your interest in foreign policy was rekindled.
It was rekindled, and it was. Something else was going on for me, which was I was thinking a lot about wealth, and I was wondering like if wealth was really created. You know, I was thinking about natural resources, and I was actually, because I was looking at those Sebastião Salgado photographs of Brazil mining, you know, where they dig the giant hole in the ground and they they go down in the ground and they find like a big pile of lucre, and then that pile of money goes somewhere. And I was wondering if maybe capitalism didn't work in almost like a perfect stasis. That, in other words, to make money, really what you're doing is you're either cutting down trees, digging up gold, sucking oil out of the ground, and it's just going somewhere else on the planet. So there's like a pile somewhere and a hole somewhere else, then there's a hole there and a pile somewhere else. And I thought, maybe the system is just sort of like this. The world is this tightly wound, sort of interwoven system. And I was kind of thinking about this in a real kind of neo-communist kind of way, if you will. And I was wondering what that was all about. Then 9/11 happened. To get your planes out of the Holy Land. Then George Bush's reaction and policy, which seemed just utterly perplexing to me, you know, which was to, you know, it was a no-win situation to mobilize. You know, we had this big stick. You never want to use the big stick. That's the first thing of the big stick policy. Never use the big stick. But, you know, Bush missed that memo. Cheney missed that memo.
Walk softly.
Yeah, walk softly, carry a big stick, but never use the stick. Never. Because you use the stick, they see, the stick's not that scary. That's the lesson. You know, that's the lesson of Vietnam. You know, we thought, oh, if they'll just show up, if they'll just come and fight, you know, and like the way we like to fight, but they're scared. No, they're just canny. They'll just keep backing up. You know, land war in Asia, bad idea. It's been a bad idea forever. Everyone knows it. But
so you're thinking about creating wealth. You're thinking about the war, 9/11. And how did Bob Baer happen?
Someone sent Soderbergh, the puppet master, the man behind all things. I'm okay. Someone sent Soderbergh a copy of Bob's book, See No Evil. And I guess he glanced at it and he said a funny line. He said, let's send it to Gaghan and see if he can make some sense of this. So I read it, and there was one sentence in there that I loved. And you'll when I tell it to you, you'll hear this, you'll see it sort of fit with. The sentence was, so after 15 years of working in the Middle East, I came back to Washington, and I couldn't get an appointment at the National Security Council because I was lined up too deep behind all the oil lobbyists. So I was like, here's our Iraq bureau chief, comes back to USA, gets a desk job in Washington, wants to go to the National Security Council and tell them what he knows. He's a fluent Arabic speaker, fluent speaker of Farsi, and he can't get an appointment. They won't see him. That's the truth. He could not get an appointment. It'd be like trying to get a restaurant.
And that intrigued
you.
you.
I was like, wait, behind oil lobbyists? What are you talking about? You know, now we sort of take it as like a given that oil people affect our foreign policy, but back then, you know, I don't think it was so clear. And so then as I started to, you know, hang out with Bob and go around with Bob and travel with Bob and spend time in the Middle East with,
Why did he let you come and hang out with him?
because he was angry. He was angry and he wanted to make some points about what was going on.
And then you went in what you call your best college trip.
Yeah, the best trip ever.
And where did this college trip take you?
Well, I again was in Malibu watching the dolphins, and the phone rang, and he said, it was Bob. Hey, Steve, it's Bob. Were you really serious about what you said about learning about the Middle East? Were you serious when you said that? And I was like, yeah, I think so. And he was like, great. You know, meet me in Beirut on Tuesday. And I said, in a funny line, or at least what I thought was funny, I said, Beirut, is that east of the 405? And he started laughing. And he said, actually, meet me in Nice, and then we'll go to Beirut. And I was like, Nice, France? And he said, yeah, it's August. If you want to know how the Middle East works, you got to go to the south of France in August. And I was like, why? And he said, because anybody who has any power gets out of the heat in the desert, and they go to the south of France, and I'll introduce you to them all. And I went, and he did. Everybody. And you'd have been amazed at the power, the width and breadth of the Rolodex of a CIA case officer is astonishing. You know, he knows kings and queens and heads of state.
And why do they talk to them?
Because he's really powerful.
He can pass on information.
He's really powerful. Because he pulls, a guy, there's probably only, at any one time, I would say, like back then, 50 or maybe 100 at the outside, effective case officers in the CIA. And they have a running joke, which is, why are there so few? And they just say that because that's all it takes. And they're really good at what they do.
Did the CIA have any problems with you making this movie?
I mean, the only, you know...
Did you have to get clearance, or...?
I mean, Bob had to have his book vetted, and he had to redact a bunch of stuff, but he's a really off-the-cuff kind of guy, and, you know, we have a lot of protections of freedom of speech in this country, you know, we still do, despite, you know, Cheney-Bush era. But you know, for whatever reason, I mean, like the most heat we ever got was, you know, we were sitting on, we were on Fox News in Washington, and I'm sitting there on a stool, and Bob's sitting next to me, and you know, they're just blustering on and on, like, so you're saying that that the CIA would sanction an attack on a sovereign head of state in a sovereign nation, that we would actually go after the sovereign head of a state in a sovereign nation, you know, and it was just on and on and on, and I'm just like, God, I just can't. And then finally Bob goes, you know, I'll handle this one. Yes, that's what I'm saying. I did it. Yes. And they all just went silent, because that's where the rubber hits the road, you know, and it's rare that you get someone like Bob who, you know, will be honest about the things that they did. And
tell us about your visit to Beirut, and which was kind of, I've seen the interview where you talk about it, and I think part of what happened is reflected in the movie when Clooney goes to see the Hezbollah leader.
well, yeah, it was scary. I mean, you know, it was a crazy thing. So
Why did you consent? You land up in Beirut. You don't know a soul.
So this is like 2000. I mean, actually, it was coming into the anniversary of 9/11 in 2002. So it was less than 1 year after 2002. That's because it took forever to get Syriana made. So the research and the writing and then just getting it made took forever. So I was way ahead of the curve in what I was writing about. Like by the time the movie came out, the end of '05, you know, a lot of the stuff I was discovering in '01, you know, other journalists had discovered.
So there was an awareness of sorts.
But at the time I was doing it, like no one really knew what was going on at all in this, I don't think. And a few people, like Bob, who'd spent their life there. But so I arrived by myself at the Beirut airport, and a man that a man that I'd heard the name of, I hadn't spoken to him, who was a friend of Bob's friend, David Ignatius. So David Ignatius and Bob knew each other a little bit. Ignatius, who I'd met in Paris, had given me some names, but I hadn't called any of them yet. And as I'm standing in line to clear customs, I have an international cell phone that Warner Brothers has given me, and it rings, and it's a voice, a cultured English voice that says, I have something very special you can do, but you have to do it right now, and I can't tell you what it is. And I'm like, what? He's like, I have something very special you can do, but you have to do it right now. I'm like, well, what is it? And he goes, my driver's out in front of the airport. Just go with my driver. I can't tell you what it is, but it's very special. I'm like, who is this? And so I cleared customs, and there's a man there, doesn't speak any English, and he's looking at me and gesticulating that I'm supposed to come with him. And I have no idea. It was so stupid, I mean, all rational thought, you should never go with this person. I mean,
It's the cultured voice that did you in.
it is exactly. It's your damn English education system. But so I got in the car with this guy. We're driving down this main highway, leaving the airport, and suddenly he just slows down and takes a hard right turn in this four-wheel drive vehicle. We just drive off the highway down into this neighborhood, and it was really weird. And suddenly we're driving through these streets, and I'm asking him where we're going, and he's speaking Arabic, and I'm speaking English, and just no one knows what's happening. And then suddenly people have guns. Everyone has guns. We're in a really heavily guarded part of the town. A gate comes down across the street. There's guys with guns on the other side getting out of a car. They're coming to my car. Your brain starts going in slow motion.